Incan roads and suspension bridges. Inca transportation. As the Inca Empire grew, so did the need for transportation. As a result, the Inca built a large roadway system. One road ran north and south along the Pacific coast for 2,250 miles. A second road was built along the Andes Mountains. It was almost the same length. Many shorter east-west roads connected these two north-south roads. The roads wound through mountain passes and valleys. Mountain passes were low points on a mountain ridge, which made it easier to cross the mountain. They were heavily used by people traveling on foot. Bridges made of stone or rope crossed rivers and valleys. Sometimes a mountain was too steep for the road to continue. Then the Inca would cut a towering staircase into the slope so the mountain could be crossed. Unfortunately for the Inca, their roadways helped bring about the empire's fall. Spanish forces arrived and defeated the Inca in 1530s. The roadways allowed them to move quickly throughout the land. Okay, so the Incas built this huge roadway that ran north and south, okay? And it was 2,250 miles long. You guys, that's a really, really, really long way. This road was across the Pacific coast, so like along the ocean. And then they built another one that ran along the Andes Mountains. So they had these two long straight roadways, and then they had a bunch of little roads that came in and out that connected them. Kind of like our highway systems today. Think about like the on-off ramps of like 695, that type of concept, okay? So the roadways, though, allowed other people from the outside to come in, and eventually the Spanish came in and captured them, and that was the end of the Incas in the 1530s. But the Inca Empire, trade and transportation. Suspension bridges. A well-constructed network of roads connected all parts of the Inca Empire. Suspension bridges maintained by the local communities spanned rivers and canyons. Some of these roads and bridges still exist today. Rest stops were common along the roads. Some of these were large structures with facilities to house the Inca army and storehouses to feed travelers. People traveled by foot, and, and llamas carried all the food. The Inca did not use any wheeled carts or vehicles, which were useless on the mountainous roads. The emperor and nobles rode on litters, seats mounted on poles and carried on men's shoulders. The Inca used boats and rafts on the major rivers, lakes, and on ocean voyages along the Pacific coast. All right, so they had all these roads and bridges. Okay, so a suspension bridge is just a bridge that's over top of either a cannon, so there's a hole in the middle, okay, or over top a river. Some of these roads and bridges are still there today. So, but when we're talking about these roads and bridges, we're not talking about cars going on them, okay? So we're talking about they went on foot, okay? The Inca did not use wheeled vehicles or carts. They climbed on foot. There were a lot of mountains there. Remember, they were up by the Andes Mountains, which are really steep. So they would walk on foot, and the nobles, you guys, would sit on like two people's shoulders, my shoulders and someone in front of me. We would have like poles, and the noble would sit on the top, and we would have to carry them. Oh, that sounds painful. Mountain highways. The road network had two main roads linking the north and the south. There was also a web of crossroads that reached nearly every village. The empire was very spread out, so the road system was needed for communication. Runners were needed because many roads were too steep for carts. Relay runners used 10,000 miles of roads to carry messages between government officials. These runners worked in teams and covered up to 250 miles each day. The roads also were used by the military. The military would travel quickly to any region to protect the empire from invasion or to stop rebellions. Okay, so remember we talked about runners in a previous lesson. They would literally take a note, and this person would run and meet up with another person and pass the note off, and then they would run, and they could go up to 250 miles a day. The mountain roads caused problems for traders. Llamas were common in the Andes, and the Inca used them as pack animals. Llamas could carry heavy loads. They were also a source of wool. The wool was spun into yarn. Then it was boiled in dye. The dyed yarn was turned into cloth. Inca women paid their labor tax by spinning and dyeing wool. Llamas also provided food for the Inca. So we've talked about this before too. Llamas were extremely important during the Inca Empire and to the Inca. They were used to carry their heavy loads if they were trading or traveling. They were also then shaved, and the wool was used to make clothing. Okay, and people also ate them. So the llama was very important. Bridges. In the Andes, there were many gorges or deep river passageways. They posed another challenge for the Inca. Roads were often stopped by these gorges. This meant that some Incan cities were separated from each other. The Inca built rope suspension bridges by twisting together plant fibers. These bridges could reach across the gorges. Some were more than 300 feet long. One bridge, constructed in 1350 CE, lasted more than 500 years. These bridges were similar to today's modern bridges. The roads and bridges of the Inca helped unify the empire. They allowed travel and trade. The road system made communication between the four regions of the empire easier. It also allowed the army to move quickly to wherever it was needed. This all helped the emperor keep the sprawling Inca empire together even while it grew. Okay, so these are all things we've talked about before, you guys. How roads and the bridges were super important to connect all the little villages and all the areas of the empires. Um, it helped people to move more quickly. It helped unite the empire. The military could come in and help if they were needed. Trade was possible. Incan terrace and farming and aqueducts. Life in the Andes was challenging, and farming was very difficult. The steep mountains limited the amount of land that could be used for farming. It was also hard to find water for the crops. To solve these problems, the Inca used a system known as terrace farming. They built a series of wide steps on the side of mountains. They covered these steps or terraces with soil and planted them with crops. Without the terraces, the mountains would have been too steep for farmers to water, plow, and harvest. The terrace system gave the Inca more land for farming. It also kept the topsoil from washing away in the heavy rain. All right, so this is not a new concept. We've talked about this the past couple weeks. We talked about these how the mountain was very steep, so they built steps and then they planted on the steps. Rain falls regularly in the Andes from December to March. Sometimes, though, there are long periods with no rainfall at all. The Inca needed to make sure they had water for their farms. They built large canal systems. These irrigated or brought water to their fields. The canals also brought water to the cities. Many streets had fresh water running through a canal. This made daily chores such as washing clothes much easier. Incan farmers used bird droppings or guano to fertilize the coastal areas. They used the remains of dead animals such as llamas to fertilize the highlands. Maize, squash, beans, and potatoes were the staple crops of the empire. Farmers also grew cocoa for its leaves. They chewed cocoa to be less tired and hungry. The farmers were taxed on all the crops they grew. They gave most of their crops to the government. The government controlled how farmers used the crops. The government kept a large supply of food in case of a long drought. The system was called the Mita. It was a way of organizing wealth to give the emperor power. Controlling the food supply helped the emperor keep the empire together. All right, you guys, and we talked about these things last week too, okay? So maize is corn. They had corn, squash, beans, potatoes. These were the main things that they grew, okay? They used bird droppings or dead animals to fertilize the soil or to make it rich in nutrients so that things would grow better. So the farmers, though, they were taxed on the crops and they had to actually give their crops to the government, and then the government controlled how the food was distributed. So that was one way for the emperor to be in power. Okay, see you later.